Hi Gemini, welcome to a weekly tarot reading for February 1st through the 7th. It's Rena here. I don't normally do these. I just was trying to plug up my schedule, and I knew that I was trying to think of some idea for a video, and I thought, hey, I'll try these. I haven't done them in a long time. This is a slightly different spread than I normally use. I was trying to make a more brief tarot reading, and it didn't turn out that way so far. It's been about the same length, but oh well. So the focus for this first week of February is the Five of Wands. So it gets off to a fiery start. You can see there's multiple hands in the pot or going at it. In general, the Five of Wands can be conflict. So this can indicate if you're, any area of your life, just think about that. If you have a particular relationship that seems like no matter what happens, maybe there are some good times, but there's always this kind of butting up against each other. What does that mean to you? Is that acceptable? Is it bearable? And if you're feeling really uncomfortable with it, why do you continue with this relationship? There has to be some kind of payoff on your end. But, it's like just why? It can also be a card of competition, but it doesn't have to be bad. I mean, this could be like you in some kind of sporting event. When I was doing it the first time, I was thinking, I wonder how many Geminis, though, would be doing something like that. Normally, I would think of something on the mental level. But obviously, competition can be toxic, too, where it's in the workplace and it's a dog-eat-dog atmosphere. And that can feel really uncomfortable for a person who is normally not really interested in living that way. And a Gemini person is kind of like that. If you're dealing with an Aries person, they love conflict and they love competition, because that's just the Mars energy that rules Aries, is the god of war. And what is war about? Winners and losers. Who's power? You're more of a sign. You're a mutable sign, so you're more flexible, cooperative, when you want to be, obviously. And so it doesn't hold much appeal to you to have this kind of conflict. But there may be, I was, when I was doing this the first time, I was wondering if there are some of you who are dealing with some kind of monetary fight, because I did get a couple of these Pentacles cards. And so knowing that your 8th house, which is shared resources, is actually in the sign of Capricorn, there's so much going on there that it wouldn't surprise me. And you've had these triggers like a solar eclipse back in December, which may have moved things forward to some degree, but then 2 steps back perhaps. So just a little review. Pluto has been there for 12 years. Saturn has been there for a couple of years. You have the South Node there for the last year. Now you have Jupiter, so that may actually make things better. I don't know about some of those. Venus might be there for all I know. I can't remember. I'd have to look at my ephemeris. So the bottom line is that there may be something going on that is dealing with an inheritance, or if it's like a divorce proceeding or a liquidation of a business that involves you and another person, and it's like everybody wants their piece of the pie, especially like an inheritance situation. It could even be family members, and that can produce a fair amount of unpleasantness. In the past position, we have the Knight of Swords, so sometimes this represents a lawyer. If this is you, you may be speaking out and saying enough is enough. One of the things about Gemini is that you are a sign of communication for sure. But whether or not you speak out is a different story. In other words, a person can communicate profusely, run their mouth, and yet not be aggressive with their speech. The swords are all the air signs and what they represent, which is communication, thought. So teachers, lawyers, that's why I was saying this could be a lawyer too, but just a facet of you that is becoming more outspoken. And especially if you have Mercury in Cancer, you may be the type who isn't like full throttle when it comes to any type of communication. You may kind of like hold back a little bit and be a little bit more intuitive, sensitive about it. If your Mercury is in Taurus, you may be very subdued as well. Just because you want to keep the peace, you don't want to get riled up. And so that can affect things. But even Gemini is very, is typically very detached. So if it's very heated with other people and the emotions are running high, you might be the one to be a bit above it all. And if somebody's trying to bait you, you may kind of hold off. But you may have had enough, and so you're getting in the fray, and for whatever reason. You might feel that you're being treated unfairly, for instance, or that your rights are being trampled on. The energy surrounding you is the King of Pentacles. This could be the person who has passed away, and this would be like a father figure, perhaps. This person may have had a lot of money. Perhaps they owned a business and they have a lot of assets. But this can also be a person who is a bank manager or somebody who works in the stocks, where there are more assets than were originally known about, and this person is coming into the situation in a very big way. If this is a workplace kind of conflict, the King of Pentacles may be somebody who, the CEO or the head of the company that is not your immediate supervisor, but is somebody that you can appeal to, because perhaps you are being managed by somebody who is actually not really good at what they do. They have I notice that where people who don't really know how to be a positive leader will use very underhanded tactics to get people fighting with one another. So Five of Wands can be people in the workplace at each other's throat, thanks to a manager that utilizes the worst kind of tactics that you would think of, like going back to when you're a kid. And when this is pointed out, I trained in the education field, and I never did get a teaching license, but one of the things that was discussed, and these were like new observations, is the idea of when you say to someone, I don't know if they were for or against it, saying, I like how Bobby is sitting and, doing his work. I think that that's actually a bad thing to do, because I think it compares one child to the other and creates a lot of rivalries and stuff like that. So I now that I think about it, they may have actually recommended that approach rather than, chastising a child. Of course, you don't want to chastise children, but the point is, fostering a lot of jealousy is not good either. And so this may be kind of what's going on in your workplace. And so you may be trying to appeal to a higher authority for that. And the advice is the Five of Pentacles, and this is a card of lack consciousness. this is a card. It's funny, this card does connect to Mercury and Taurus specifically. But this idea of, I would say in any, it's funny because this does apply to the workplace in general. In my experience, I found that there are certain people, and this is probably very primitive within some human beings, that idea of survival and the fear that somebody else is going to take their job, their livelihood, their money, their ability to support themselves, can turn people into monsters. And sometimes it's the ego, and they want to, be the MVP, the most valuable player. But sometimes it's really like a fear of being usurped, like having their, not having a demotion, or somehow being shown up by somebody else. And it can make people do terrible things. So realize that. Maybe you're thinking everybody's like you, and you don't realize how dirty people can get. The reason I'm saying this is because you don't want to be taken by surprise. And you also, this is one of the things that I remind people, is that sometimes people win in arbitration when they're being treated unfairly in the workplace, and they're being targeted, or they're being suppressed. And it's like, okay, you won the battle, but you lost the war because you have to be there, and you have to be surrounded by this toxicity. And even if it's not overt, it can still be underneath the surface. And it's like, to me, there's nothing worse than having to go in every day with people that you can sense have animosity towards you. And they may have animosity towards you because you're so good. It is probably why. People don't tend to envy or have negative feelings towards people they consider inferior to them. So just keep that in mind, but don't think that if you're trying to hold on to something and it's very toxic, it may not be worth it. If this is this applies to anything, because even if this is like an inheritance or you're getting divorced, it's like poverty consciousness, lack consciousness is to blame a lot of times for making people lose their peace. Because when you think about it, you don't even have to. I mean, you can give the other person what they want, at the end of the day. And maybe sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Maybe, people need to learn a lesson if they're doing something that is immoral, if they're cheating other people. Perhaps giving in isn't a good idea. But in some cases, it's really not worth it. It's not worth the stress that it puts on your life, the ugliness that that enters into your life. I was in a situation like that, and I decided to let it go, because the way that I let it go with the person, with the will, is I said, well, that's what that person wanted. And even though it might sting to realize that, it's not going to change anything. Even if I get the money, and I'm able to coerce the courts into giving me money, it's not going to erase the fact that I was not left this money in the first place from somebody that, you would assume would give you that sense of fairness. And it's like, it is what it is. And I don't consider myself a greedy person. I like money, I'm not crazy, but I'm not that covetous that I would just do whatever it takes. My peace of mind was way more important than that. So I just want to kind of put it all out there. The outcome, and this may even be that you have to put your feelings aside. You have to be more rational about whatever the situation is, and you know, F your feelings. Sometimes, like I said, it may feel bad if it's something to do with the will, because sometimes we look at money as proof of how much somebody cared about us, which is ridiculous. Sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with that. It has to do with, you know, maybe they were trying to please somebody who wanted that money and was manipulating them, and maybe you weren't manipulating them. And you know, that saying came into my mind: every good deed goes unpunished. I mean, it's every good deed goes punished. No, does that say? It's punished. Every good deed goes punished. But anyway, it's pretty cynical. You know, basically, when you try to do the right thing, sometimes you end up getting the shaft, right? But that's not really true. I think that it might be relatively true in some instances in the worldly sense, but I think ultimately when we're doing the right thing on a daily basis, we sleep well at night, we feel a sense of dignity, that we didn't lower ourselves to what other people are doing, and that's worth a lot. And so staying above the fray, I would say, is the order of the day. There's your daily rhyme. Queen of Swords, maybe having to make a decision, and making a decision that is not overly emotional, even if you feel that way. Okay, Gemini, that's what I have for you. I hope that you start the month of February with a desire for peace over all else. And if you'd like a private reading, the link to my website and my web store is below. Take care. Bye.